We're taught that the constellations are simply a game of cosmic connect the dots, arbitrary patterns our ancestors imagined in the sky. But what if that's not the whole truth? Could the specific arrangements of stars highlighted by ancient Sumerians represent something far more deliberate? A message? A warning? Or perhaps a map to their creator's home? In the sun-scorched lands of ancient Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerian civilization emerged. They gave us writing, the wheel, law, and time itself. We see them as the dawn of history. But their ancient clay tablets tell a story that goes far beyond what we read in our history books. They speak of powerful beings who came from the heavens, the Anunnaki. Tonight, we aren't just looking at myths. We are going to embark on a calm journey into unexplored history. We will decode the astronomical knowledge hidden within these ancient texts, examine controversial artifacts that challenge mainstream thought, and explore the mind-bending possibility that the first star maps were not of our sky, but of a sky that once belonged to someone else. Our journey will ask one simple yet profound question. Were our ancient ancestors really as primitive as we've been led to believe? To understand this story, we must first travel back in time. More than 6,000 years ago, the Sumerians built the world's first cities, Uruk or Eridu. In the quiet of the night, free from the light pollution that veils our own view of the cosmos, they looked up. And they didn't just see lights, they saw order. They saw mathematics. Their understanding of mathematics was staggering. They developed the base 60 system that we still use to measure time and space. This wasn't just for counting sheep or bushels of grain. It was for mapping the heavens with a precision that should have been impossible for their time. Their astronomical catalog, known as the Mul Apen, lists constellations, planets, and the heliacal risings of stars with remarkable accuracy. But for the Sumerians, these celestial bodies were not just objects, they were divine. Each planet was associated with a deity from their pantheon. Jupiter was Marduk, Venus was the glorious Inanna, and ruling over them all were the Anunnaki, a term that translates to those who from heaven to earth came. According to their epic poems and king lists, these beings were not metaphors. They were real flesh and blood rulers who descended from the sky, lived for extraordinarily long periods, and gifted humanity with the building blocks of civilization. Mainstream history categorizes these as creation myths, foundational stories common to all cultures. But the level of detail, the sheer volume of astronomical data woven into these myths begs us to look closer. What if they weren't just telling stories? What if they were recording history? This brings us to a collection of artifacts that are deeply polarizing. Objects that sit uncomfortably between established history and what some call unexplored history. One of the most famous is a cylinder seal known as VA/243, housed in a Berlin museum. For decades, it was seen as a simple depiction of a star and other celestial symbols. But in the 1970s, an author named Zecharia Sitchin offered a radical new interpretation. Sitchin, who had taught himself to read Sumerian cuneiform, claimed this was not just any star. He argued it was our sun, surrounded not by random stars, but by the planets of our solar system. But if you count them, there's a problem. There are 11 globes around the central star. Sitchin's theory accounts for our known planets, including the Moon as an important world in its own right, but adds one more, a massive, undiscovered 12th member of our solar system, which he called Nibiru. According to Sitchin's translation of the texts, this was the homeworld of the Anunnaki, a planet on a vast 3,600-year elliptical orbit that brought it into the inner solar system periodically. This, he claimed, was the entire basis for their astronomical and mathematical knowledge. They weren't observing from Earth alone, they were describing a solar system they had traversed. Now, it is critical to state that the scientific and academic communities almost universally reject Sitchin's theory. The consensus is that his translations are flawed and his conclusions are pseudoscience. The symbols on the seal are more likely the Pleiades or another constellation, common motifs in Mesopotamian art. But our goal here tonight isn't to prove a theory right or wrong. It's to sit with the questions it raises. How did the Sumerians know what Uranus and Neptune looked like? Planets invisible to the naked eye. Sitchin points to their descriptions of these planets as blue-green and watery. Mainstream archaeology says it's a coincidence. But as we rest in this quiet space of inquiry, we can wonder, is it? The seal, whether a planetary map or a simple constellation, invites us to question the limits of ancient knowledge.
Perhaps the most profound piece of evidence for advanced ancient astronomy lies not in a single artifact, but in a celestial motion so slow, so vast, it's almost incomprehensible. It's called the precession of the equinoxes. Think of the Earth as a slightly off-balanced spinning top. As it spins, its axis slowly wobbles, tracing a giant circle in the sky. This wobble is incredibly slow. To complete just one circle takes nearly 26,000 years. What this means is that the North Star changes over millennia. The constellation that rises with the sun on the first day of spring also changes, moving backward through the 12 zodiacal constellations. Each age of the zodiac lasts for over 2,000 years. Officially, this phenomenon was discovered by the Greek astronomer Hipparchus in the 2nd century BCE. But there is compelling evidence scattered across the globe that knowledge of this great cycle is far, far older. The Sumerians encoded the zodiac. Their stories, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, contain allegories that seem to map directly onto these astrological ages. Their age was the age of Taurus, the bull. The preceding age was Gemini, the twins, and before that, Leto, the lion. The timelines described in their own king lists, which speak of rulers reigning for thousands of years, seem absurd. But what if they aren't records of human lifespans? What if they are a coded way of tracking humanity's passage through these vast celestial ages? To know about precession is to understand time on a cosmic, non-human scale. It requires meticulous, unbroken observation over thousands of years. Or, it requires a legacy of knowledge handed down from someone who had already figured it out. Someone, perhaps, who measured time not in days and years, but in the slow, silent turning of the heavens.
For a long time, we had a simple, linear story of human progress. First, humans learned to farm. This allows them to settle down, which leads to villages, then cities, and only then, with time to spare, do they develop complex religion, art, and science, like astronomy. Göbekli Tepe shatters that story completely. Discovered in the 1990s, this site is a staggering 12,000 years old. That's more than 6,000 years before Stonehenge or the first pyramids. It was built by people who were, according to our old timeline, simple hunter-gatherers. Yet they quarried, moved, and erected hundreds of multi-ton stone pillars, arranging them in perfect circles and carving them with stunning artistry. The question is, why? The current leading theory is that Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement, but a temple. More than that, it may be the world's first astronomical observatory. Researchers have found that the enclosures are aligned with astonishing precision to specific points on the horizon, marking the rising of important stars like Sirius. One pillar in particular, Pillar 43, has captured the imagination of researchers. It appears to be a celestial snapshot. The animals carved on it are not random. They seem to represent constellations, including Sagittarius and Scorpio. Some scientists have interpreted the entire pillar as a date stamp, marking a specific moment in time using the positions of the stars altered by precession. And the date it points to? Around 10,950 BCE. Even more startling, these researchers believe the pillar depicts a cataclysmic event, a comet impact that triggered a mini ice age known as the Younger Dryas. It could be a memorial, a warning passed down through generations. This pushes the origin of complex astronomy back to the very dawn of our current geological age. It tells us that before we even knew how to plant a seed, we were already mapping the stars. The question it forces upon us is, who taught us?
We've journeyed from the tablets of Sumer to the ancient hills of Turkey, and the questions only grow deeper. The evidence suggests a level of knowledge that simply shouldn't exist in our accepted timeline of history. If this journey into our shared past is stimulating your curiosity, I would be honored if you would subscribe to the channel and join our community of thoughtful explorers. Your support allows us to continue creating content like this, and I would genuinely love to know your thoughts. After we finish our exploration, please leave a comment below sharing which piece of evidence, the Sumerian star charts, the Göbekli Tepe alignments, or perhaps what we are about to discuss now, you find most fascinating. Now, let's look at the final piece of the puzzle.
The astronomical knowledge we see in Sumer and at Göbekli Tepe doesn't exist in a vacuum. When we pull our perspective back and look at the entire globe, a breathtaking pattern begins to emerge. We find other ancient cultures, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, building monumental structures aligned to the same celestial patterns. In Egypt, the three great pyramids of Giza appear to be a perfect terrestrial map of the three stars in Orion's belt, not just in their layout, but also in their relative size. The Nile River beside them, mirroring the Milky Way in the sky. In England, Stonehenge acts as a massive, silent clock, marking the solstices and equinoxes. In Ireland, the 5,000-year-old tomb of Newgrange is built so that on the winter solstice, a single shaft of sunlight penetrates a small opening and illuminates the central chamber for just 17 minutes. Across the Atlantic, the Anasazi created the sun dagger petroglyph, which uses falling slabs of rock to cast a sliver of light that precisely marks the solstices. The list goes on and on, a global network of silent stone observatories, all speaking the same cosmic language. How is this possible? How could so many disconnected cultures all arrive at the same complex astronomical knowledge and express it in such similar ways? Did they all independently discover the 26,000-year precessional cycle? Or is it more plausible that they were all working from a shared inheritance, a global system of knowledge left behind by a much older predecessor civilization that we have forgotten?
This is where we circle back to the Sumerian tablets, back to their story of the Anunnaki, a story not of gods in a metaphorical heaven, but of travelers from another world in our own solar system who brought with them a master blueprint of the cosmos and gave it to humanity. It's a fantastic story, but as we look at the silent evidence written in stone and starlight across our planet, one has to wonder if the fantastic truth might be simpler than the impossible coincidence. Our journey tonight has been one of quiet contemplation. We haven't found definitive answers, but perhaps we have found better questions. We've seen that Sumerian astronomy was more than myth, that knowledge of immense cosmic cycles may be tens of thousands of years old, and that this knowledge appears all over the globe. The core message is not that we must believe in ancient aliens, but that we must not so easily dismiss the wisdom of our ancestors. Their legacy, written in stone and aligned with the stars, invites us to be more curious, to question our assumptions, and to remember that there is still so much unexplored history waiting to be discovered. Thank you for spending your time with me tonight.